I just recently finished Inside. Well, duh, it came out yesterday. But what I mean is I finished it very recently, so that it's fresh on and in my mind. After running through this little tale, I honestly have no idea what just happened, and I think I'm going to have a tough time explaining why I'm rating this game, what I'm rating it. So, here goes. Okay, so, with that nonsense out of the way and the obvious hyperbole I hope you could pick up on, it's not without a little merit. If you read my in-between review, and I definitely think you should, you'd seen that I went into a lot of metaphor talk within and explaining a bunch of things. I won't do that here, but it's not due to lack of knowledge, and allow me to explain. Inside doesn't play its story out in the same way. With In Between, while it's also a puzzle game with an emphasis on story, it's one that you instantly know how the game will begin and end, possibly even before you boot the game up. That works for that game. However, were I to start breaking down some things from this game, well, I feel like it could ruin much of what makes this game special in its own right. So I'm going to do what I can to keep things that could spoil the game to an absolute minimum. Well, I mean, to the best of my abilities, and, fingers crossed that we get there. Right off the bat, I need to set up my expectations for what I thought this game would be. I'm a major fan of Playdead's first game, Limbo, as I expect many people are, because it's a damn fine game, and it showed what a small team can do with the passion and drive to create something special. If you haven't, you should play it. The premise or setup for that game is super simple. Uncertain of his sister's fate, a boy enters Limbo. And that's it. That's the whole thing. Within that game, a decent amount of story is told without anyone ever saying a word. Inside takes the exact same approach. Hunted and alone, a boy finds himself drawn into the center of a dark project. And again, that's it. From the bits and pieces I'd seen over the years prior to playing, I truly expected this game to be a direct sequel to Limbo. It's not. Look, I know I said I wasn't going to spoil anything, but honestly, I threw this out there on the off chance it could hinder someone's enjoyment of the game once they figure that out. I'm sorry, and I'll try even harder to zip my lips on anything else, I promise. What Inside actually is, at least to me, is a very clear spiritual successor. It takes everything its predecessor does, and does it better. Thinking more on it, it's like a game series that started on the NES, and the next one in the line debuted on the SNES. If you don't understand the meaning here, for whatever reason, just know it's a compliment. It plays virtually the same, but better. It tells a story the same way, but better. Visually, it's got everything firing on all cylinders, and within that story, again, just as Limbo did, it tells it without ever uttering a word, but this time, it tells it so much better. Much more clear, and even harder hitting. I honestly don't know how they did it, but they did. Some companies never get to strike gold, even once, let alone twice, and this one did. In a row. Alright, let's move on to the graphics for a bit. It takes great advantage of the type of game it is with the power of the Xbox One. Type of game being a 2D side-scrolling puzzler. Everything looks smooth. Everything looks great, whether in motion or standing still. Now, unlike Limbo, there's a much higher color palette than the black, white, and gray it had. Now, that's not to say it doesn't take cues from that, because it definitely does, but it does it more subtly, and the inclusion of reds, oranges, and yellows here and there help make the world even more pretty to look at, as well as serving to point you in the very specific directions that they need you to go. Another cool thing is I never found any graphical glitches, like flickering textures, floating objects that shouldn't be floating, oddly moving limbs on the characters, etc. Things like that. Not one of them. And those things I find constantly and consistently in games. Even the best ones. But here, nothing. It never bothers me when it's here or there in a game, and I only bring it up in a review if it's a really big hindrance in any way. Sometimes I actually kind of like it, because it amuses me if it's not breaking anything. Now, I'm bringing it up here for the opposite reason. I think my game must have been glitched, because I never encountered it. The amount of graphical effects going on here, from the weather to the lighting, to the shadows, to the water, I would have expected something, somewhere. Slow down, frame rate locks, anything. I didn't, and trust me, I looked. And yeah, the lighting is fantastic. So is the shadow work, and the weather, and the water. Now, I'm pointing it out this way because these things are all major parts of the game, and rarely, if ever, are a combo of the lot not ever working together on screen. It's damn impressive how everything runs so smoothly. And speaking of smooth, man, the animations in the game are a sight to behold. The kid is constantly reacting to everything. Brushing up against something you figured would just be in the background. The background, the foreground, movement all around him. The jumps, the nip-ups, the stumbles, the rolls, etc. He takes it all in stride, almost as if he wasn't a character on screen. The work that must have gone into perfecting every animation must have been crazy, especially for a small team. You can instantly understand why the game has taken so long to come out, and instantly be glad it did. I don't know how many unique animations there are, but throughout the whole experience, it felt like every single one was brand new, even though I know it wasn't. Yeah, they're that good. Oh, and so is the camera. Yeah, it's a 2D side-scroller, but the way the perspective shifts and the way the 2.5D works into puzzles, or even just evoke a mood or increase the atmosphere, it's wonderfully done. The entire time I was completely aware of how much care went into making everything click perfectly in these areas. Not only because I was looking for it, but because just the entire feel of everything screams it. While the game isn't devoid of music, much of the sound design here is the cool, constant breathing sounds of the red-shirted kid, sound effects of everything going on around you, which of course, you guessed it, do a great job of feeling exactly as you would expect and want them to, whether that be moving around objects, opening up areas, or the quote-unquote wildlife all around you. The subtle musical tones when needed to evoke that almighty emotion the game strives so hard to achieve. When it's there, it does a great job of getting what it needs out of a scene, and when it's gone, you don't really notice, but not in a bad way, because there's honestly a good amount of sound going on the whole time, especially if you really look for it. Sometimes it's just a bunch of contextual noise droning on, but it doesn't hinder the experience, it actually enhances it. Comparing the gameplay to its predecessor is a valid thing to do, because it definitely plays exactly like it. And as I said, it takes everything that game, but does it better, improving on the formula and tweaking it enough to feel just as fresh as the first time you tried it. There are also some nice nods to gameplay sequences from Limbo, which I know fans will enjoy. Overall, you'll be doing a ton of jumping, moving, and dragging objects, and pulling things to get you to the end. Oh, and swimming. I guess since this kid is older than the original, his parents taught him to swim. And swim he will. What's also pretty neat is how Inside manages to switch up the gameplay throughout your time with it, while feeling like it's exactly the same. I doubt I'm explaining that properly, but, there it is. Once you play it, you'll know just what I mean. While there's no denying you can probably already tell the eventual final result of this review, all the gushing praise doesn't live here without some faults I have with the game. I'm sure others have no issues with what I'm about to bring up, and that's great for them, but I'm me, and I have to call it like I see it, otherwise I'd be lying, and I don't do that. I brought up the fact that there's a lot of water in the game, and there is, and honestly, I feel like there's too much water. Now, please don't misconstrue what I'm saying here. I don't think these sections play poorly. On the contrary, I think they actually play and feel wonderful. I just wasn't a fan of how much time in the water we spent. Alas, this is the world and the story that they wanted to create, so thankfully it played well enough that I never wanted to bail. In fact, if I didn't have to go to bed last night, never get married, folks, I would have been up, finishing the game rather than doing it today. I never felt disengaged. Which brings me nicely to my next downside, and that's the game's length. I wish it were longer. I'm sure others are fine with the length, but I wanted more. It's a pretty short experience, running 3 to 5 hours depending on your want or need to fool around with seeing all the awesome death animations, taking a moment or 10 to admire the scenery, or your ability to solve the puzzles. Which again, shoots me over to my next point on my sad list. The puzzle difficulty is pretty easy. With Limbo, there were a lot of head-scratchers going on, and moments where things looked impossible to achieve. Not so here. I never got hung up on any puzzle for more than a few seconds, save for one where I was zoning out because I was pretty tired right before bed. Some I even stumbled across the solutions for just because I like to explore. Now, it may be because I play a lot of puzzle games, but I'm guessing it was also a conscious decision by the devs to tone down the difficulty so that everyone could make it to the end. Honestly, I'm kind of 50-50 on that move, because if that's the case, I kind of agree with it, to a degree. Now, these may be just nitpicks, but they bothered me enough to point them out, so there they are. As for the achievements you'll be racking up here, And as I expected, they take their cue directly from Limbo. But this time, thankfully, they play a small part in the story. I'm not opposed to these kinds of unlocks, however I do have an issue with not getting an achievement or trophy for beating the game. The only ones here, as in the previous game, are hidden objects you need to find out of your way. And to get the final one, you need to have gotten the 12 before it. I will give them credit though, because doing so sets you on a path to an alternate ending that, at the very least, I very much appreciate, even if it leaves you scratching your head. If you want to talk to me about both of those endings, ask me. I don't want to give too much more away here. I think I've done enough. I've stumbled around through this paragraph. I really want to talk about the endings. Really badly. But I don't want to spoil this because I think everything going on needs to be experienced for yourself. Just do it. And then ask me, because I want to talk about it. From start to finish, Inside is an amazing adventure to be on. Sure, it can be completed in one sitting, but that one sitting is a magical one, especially if you love story-filled puzzle games. Plus, one of the best parts? Towards the end of the game, there's a pretty huge twist, and to me, it's up there with some of the most what-the-fuck moments in entertainment, let alone gaming itself. And honestly, I feel like if someone says they figured it out without having it spoiled, they have to be lying. I'm incredibly good at figuring out plot twists and endings to movies and games and TV shows, much to my significant other's awe and dismay. I can do it pretty early on in things. It's less a blessing than a curse, and I truly mean that. I hate it most of the time. I don't tell you this to brag, it's just the opposite, because I never saw this coming. At all. In fact, I don't think I could have, even if you gave me an eternity to figure it out. Phenomenal job with that, guys. Seriously. It was really good. Only after replaying it a second time did I look at the signs throughout and have an inkling of what was going on, but even then, it would be a huge stretch to say I could have guessed it, even if I was made aware of what to look for my first time around. If you own an Xbox One, this is definitely a game you need to play within its life cycle, even if you don't like these kinds of games. There are no questions about that, and don't argue, because you'll lose. I'm a very good arguer. Preferably sooner rather than later, of course, unless you don't care if you have it spoiled. But please, don't let it be spoiled. Trust me, please. Whatever your tastes in games are, this should be on your list of games you need to beat before you die. 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 Die.